Okay, good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to this week's edition of Imperial as One's Belonging series. It's the series where we explore the lived experiences of individuals from the Black, Asian, and minority ethnic communities. It's an opportunity for people to share their stories of how they gained their sense of belonging. And I do say this every week because every week I learn so much about what it is that's helped individuals to get their sense of who they are and their sense of belonging in society. And this week, we have a real special guest. I wanted to have some music playing in the background, but it's Julia Toppin. And Julia is I just love her title. She's a music business lecturer. She's a junglist historian, right?
That's
A
right.
broadcaster and writer. So, Julia, I just want to say a real big thank you for sharing the platform with us. And I'm going to start off by asking you that first question, which is, can you tell me what it was or what it is that as you were growing up gave you your sense of identity and your sense of belonging?
Oh wow. Okay. I think I'm a Dulwich girl. I was born and raised in East Dulwich. Both sets of grandparents had houses in East Dulwich, and very strong family ties. My mum was one of nine. My grandmother was quite a major matriarch, not only in terms of my maternal grandmother, in terms of actually, they were both very, very matriarchal people, actually. But on my maternal side, my grandmother actually ran a partner, which is like a community, Caribbean community savings scheme. And she did that for decades. She did that well into the 90s, her 90s. And you know, us Greens, we're all very confident people. I always talk about us all being we're all quite alpha, so we're all quite confident,
Mhm.
and um, whether we've been formally educated or not, because when my aunts and uncles were going to school, that was, you know, the educational outcomes for Black children weren't as good
Mhm.
in terms of like taking their education seriously, not in
Mhm.
terms of like attainment. You know, my mum talks about teachers walking in, writing a page number on the board and walking out, you know. So but you know, we've been I come from a confident family, so on that side we were very confident and assertive in terms of personality, in terms of speaking out for ourselves. And then on my paternal grandmother's side, you know, she was very class orientated and she wanted me to go to the right primary school, which I did. I went to St. John's and St. Clement's in East Dulwich with all the doctors and dentists' children. And you know, we never spoke patois in any of the houses. And well, my aunts and uncles did, but you know, you wouldn't do it out loud to, like, you know, to my grandparents or my parents or whatever. And so I've always grown up with quite a strong sense of self. I think
Mhm.
my primary school education, looking back now, I can see that kind of cultural habitus, that kind of middle class cultural habitus. You know, we used to go to the opera and go to like classical concerts and go to art galleries and just do lots of things. So I've never felt uncomfortable in a room with, I guess, people that are on higher income brackets in other class groups.
Mhm.
I've always known that I was intelligent, and so I've never. I used to talk about never having imposter syndrome. I've never had imposter syndrome, so um, you know, I know what I can and can't do, and I think, yeah, I definitely think both sides of the family contributed to that, you know.
I like that. It's interesting, right? It's interesting that both of the people who you mentioned were both the females, your grandmother and your on both sides, the
Yes.
grandfather and father. I'm not saying that they weren't around, I'm sure they were, but the
Yeah.
ones who were driving you forward were the strong female characters within the home. Am I right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. On my dad's side, my grandmother, you know, was very instrumental in the church and in the church that was attached to the school that I got into, and
Mhm.
that was definitely a key factor. She knew what she wanted. She encouraged me. She used to take me shopping. We used to go to Harrods all the time, and people used to get normal presents, and I used to get like Wedgwood and Beatrice Potter stuff. So she was very clear on how I could tell you all the forks and inside out and go to some posh dinner that I never got to go to, but I could do all that because that was what she wanted, right? And then on the other side, my maternal grandmother might not have had lots of status in her work, because one side was a district nurse and the other she was like a hospital cook, but in terms of her power in the community, she was very, very high status. And so people would constantly be visiting, relatives would constantly be visiting, and I guess that kind of soft power, for decades she was a well-respected woman, and a member of the church, yeah, her whole life. I mean, she passed recently, and we had to go upstairs in the church and pack all the extra chairs in. It was absolutely, it was packed out because there were so many people from the community that wanted to come.
So it was an environment where you were based on, from your both your grandparents, they provided you with that sense of belonging because of how they belonged within the community. So they helped to raise you, but they were instrumental in helping you to develop into the person who you are now.
Yes, definitely, 100%.
Yeah. All right. So tell me, you mentioned about their schooling. What was your schooling like? How did that play out for you? Because they've got all of these expectations on you, and you said that you've never had imposter syndrome. I like that.
No.
Right. And you knew you were intelligent. So how did that play out for you in school?
Okay, so I went to St John's and St Clement's in East Dulwich. They've moved it to on the borders of Peckham Rye now, which is a shame, but it was in East Dulwich anyway. And I don't know, we were encouraged to read. I mean, my mum used to work for a book publisher back then, so I was an avid reader anyway. But I really enjoyed my primary school days. I can't fault. I don't have. I only have purely happy memories of my time there. I was learning. I was encouraged to learn more. I was pushed. So by the time I got to like year 4, because primary goes from like 1 to 6. By the time I got to year 4, I was what was called a free reader. So I'd read all the levels of the books up to level 6, and I could read whatever I wanted. I was never sort of held back there. We were very competitive in a healthy way, chess club and lots of activities, and it was like, who's the top person? There was another lady there, well, she's a woman now, Amanda Sellers, was always like, my little silent competition, who's going to get the highest marks and stuff like that. But it was never punitive, and I just think, we were encouraged to be inquisitive. We were encouraged to love learning, and I did. When I came out of primary school, I did love learning, and I was very confident when I came out. And I think I've written about this before, like, I think my primary school education was so good that after that, my secondary wasn't so hot in the early years. I kind of knew how to teach myself things, if that makes sense.
Right. Okay.
So if I wanted to learn something, I would just go and read, right? And that's always been my go-to. So I've always been a big reader of non-fiction, definitely non-fiction over fiction, because I'm normally learning things, taking things in. And so that's what my primary school did for me, instilled me with, confidence in my ability, confidence in my intellect, a very good vocabulary. Like, when I became an English teacher later, I went back to tools that I used then, that were used on me then, like the Chanel spelling books and stuff like that. And I use those with people that I teach, and they're just not at that level anymore. Do you know what I mean? And then secondary, everyone skipped off to Haberdasher's Asks, which is where all the middle class people's children went. And I think that was the bit where I realized, oh, okay, everyone's going to Haberdasher's Asks. How come I didn't get in? I didn't get in. And I went to a school in Annerley, Rock Hill School for Girls. And it was a different experience. I got into a lot of trouble there. You know, it was the beginning of me, Julia, getting into trouble all the time. I talked too much. I answered back too much. And then I hung out with well, I wasn't a bad girl, but I hung out back in the sheds, behind the sheds and whatever, the porta cabins. And I remember year 8, I was on report for the whole entirety of year 8. I couldn't get off report. But ahead of year, she didn't like me. I didn't really like her either. And I was just always, because you're being surveilled all the time, aren't you? Like, you can never get off report.
Yeah.
You're on report. So every time you're in a lesson, you've got to give it to the teacher, and they go, "Oh yeah, she was all right," or "Oh, she, I might have spoken like once," or she spoke or whatever. And if you don't get like a perfect score for the week, then you can't get off report. So I was on report for the whole of year 8. There was another incident. Gosh, I don't know if I should be telling you this stuff. When I ended up, I used to do taekwondo with my dad, and I kicked this door out of anger, and it was reinforced glass, and I went straight through it because I knew how to. I used to kick breeze blocks with my dad. Do you know what I mean? So that was a whole big thing where I got locked in the room, and they had to call my mum and whatever. But at Rock Hills they had the steel band. That was really cool. I loved the steel band. I used to like transpose like pop songs and all that. They don't really do that in schools anymore, steel band, do they? And then the school was closing down, and so I went to St. Martin's in the Fields, and that was a different experience because they sent me there in a Rock Hill school uniform. So the St. Martin's in the Fields in Tulsa, the uniform's brown and the Rock Hills uniform was blue. So immediately I've stepped into year 9 and people are trying to pick on me, and so I had a fight like on my 3rd day, I think, and got I don't know if I got suspended properly or not. I don't know. It wasn't like, exclusion wasn't like a buzzword then. So, and then I wasn't very happy, and I bunked, played truant for the entirety of year 9. They didn't catch me until very near the end of the year, and they tried to put me in all the bottom sets, and my mum wouldn't have it. She was like, test her, and they tested me, and I still had top scores for everything. So when I went into year 10, I still went into all the top sets for everything. And and St. Martin's was cool. Again, I had a nice group of friends. Everyone was smart there. They wanted to be smart. They wanted to excel. Some of my friends were maybe some of the naughtier elements. I know a couple of them got kicked out. But yeah, it was a happy time once I found my people. And back then I got 2 A's, 2 B's, 2 C's, 2 D's, 2 E's, which back then was actually really good. Like now they get like a sack of 9s, but I mean, we didn't have the internet and past papers and all the things that I do when I'm teaching kids now. I didn't have any of that then, so that was good.
I'm gonna just cut you for a second and just to ask, were you bored from year 6, from the equivalent of year 7 to year 10?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I wasn't very challenged, I wasn't very challenged. I never really found things difficult for a very long time. Teaching, I love because it's constant. It's a constant challenge. I think it's the short version of saying that. But I think looking back now, I probably was, a bit frustrated, a bit naughty. I could knock out the work. I did my GCSE coursework. I didn't even read the book and I got an A. I think I went out and bought the study guide and I was like, yeah, okay, fine. And then I went into the exam and I wrote my essay and Great Expectations and bish bash bosh. I was that kind of student.
From your description, it sounds to me that you weren't challenged. They weren't stretching you outside of your comfort zone, and so you found other means and other ways to entertain yourself, which sometimes wasn't the way that the teachers wanted you to be entertained, and hence you got into a little bit of trouble. But it wasn't because you weren't capable; it was because you were bored.
Yeah, I probably was, quite bored. Yeah. So so that was education, and I've always been good at school. The only thing I say, I can't draw, so I can't do art. And I was like, well, that's fine. I can do everything else, so that's all right. I used to play the violin. I used to do all sorts.
So tell me then, okay, having left school then with your suite of GCSEs, going into A levels, did you have the aspirations to go on to university straight after you finished A levels? What was the trajectory? What was it that you
Oh
wanted
yeah,
to?
no, I did, but it did not go to plan at all. So I went and did double maths and physics at A level, which was probably ill-advised. No, double maths, no, maths, physics, and German, that's right, because I like German, I like languages.
Mhm,
Um, and yeah, because I got an A for maths. So I thought I'd do pure and applied maths at A level, German and physics. Because I love physics as well.
mhm.
Not realizing that they're probably like the hardest A levels that you can do. But you know, I was free to make my own choices. I loved physics, but failed it miserably. I just, you know, boys basically is the short version of that. And I love maths. I got a D. I got a D. I was underperforming. I was having too much fun in college, and then I fell out with my German teacher very early on, and so I dropped German at the end of the first year. Even though I did love it, I hated her, and she didn't like me either. And I did double maths and double pure and applied maths. So you could do them as separate A levels. But yeah, you know, I discovered like boys and smoking reefer and all sorts of things. And so I failed my exams very terribly. I got a D for pure and applied maths, and Dr. Jovic was beside himself. He was so upset. And then I got an N for physics. And I didn't really know about like, I think he talked about repeating, but I was just like, oh, I'm just gonna go and get a job. So I didn't like repeat the exams
Mhm.
the way that people would have done now. I went and joined like a Sainsbury's management trainee scheme as like an A-level entrant because I knew I didn't have the grades to go to uni. And
Yeah.
my idea was, oh, I'll just go back as a mature student in a few years. You know, I'll do a few years of work and then I'll go to uni as a mature student. And that those few years of work turned into a decade plus of work and then going back as a mature student.
So that's really interesting what you just said there in terms of there was there no one there at that time to kind of like give you advice to say what your options were or what you could potentially do going forward?
No, no. I was one of the eldest grandchildren. I'm not the eldest.
Hmm.
Winston was the eldest, and she I think she graduated. Well, I graduated late, so I didn't graduate in the trajectory. If I'd have gone to school when you know I was supposed to go, I think I might have been the first person in the family to graduate, but
Hmm.
I was the second, I think.
Hmm.
Um, and so there wasn't really anyone to advise about. Like no one had been to university. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
No one even knew what that was even about in the
Hmm.
family. You know.
Hmm.
And at that point, my paternal grandmother, she went to Barbados when I was 14, so
Hmm.
she wasn't around to be handling that class-based side. I would imagine she would have known more about
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
Um, so then, yeah, so I was just making my own decisions on my own. People were like, yeah, go and do what you want. So
Hmm.
yeah, when I said I'm going to work, nobody kind of said, no, you should go retake your A levels. You know,
Hmm.
you're stupid and you'll pass them all next year, you know, because
Hmm.
that's what my maths professor wanted me to do.
Hmm.
Um, but I wasn't listening. I was 18. So yeah, that kind of guidance and knowledge about how university works, because you know, you start to when you know, because like posh people call uni school, don't they?
Hmm.
Because as far as they're concerned,
It's just a
you know,
continuation.
yeah, it's just a continuation, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, but I didn't know that then.
So you spent, as you said, a few years working. What was it then that you went in the kind of like as you said as a management trainee
Yeah.
and were in how was that for you and what was it that then got you back into education as it were?
Okay, so we're going to do the short version of this. I was at Sainsbury's for 3 years. I did 18-month management trainee scheme to be a department manager. So, you know,
Hmm.
uh, grocery provisions. I can't remember, but it doesn't even matter what all the departments are. Anyway, so but that was where I really encountered like hardcore racism in the workplace for the first time. So I trained at Garrett Lane, Sainsbury's in Wandsworth. And I can't remember my manager's name. I used to have a blacklist of all the people that I would, yeah, my blacklist of people that I hated, but I can't remember his surname. Just this tall guy, department manager, and he was a racist. Like when there was a robbery, you know, he at the management table, he was like, "Oh yeah, your cousins were in at the weekend," and he used to call me, he used to call me Chicken George, right? And I used to get really annoyed because I'd be like, you know, like that's a male character, like it's not
Yeah.
even like, you know, if you're gonna do it. But yeah, he was like totally racist, dude. But it was kind of accepted back then. And when it came to passing my panel, you have to get a recommendation from, you know, the manager. And he was like, nah, this person's not fit to be a manager. She can't be a manager, fail, right? But you also have to do an exam and an interview at the area office. And I got one of the highest exam marks in the area. And then obviously like blew them away at interview, right? So they couldn't fail me, but they did pass me, but they passed me and they sent me to work at the Dulwich branch as a shelf stacker in a management uniform. And yes, this is, oh yeah. And so I did that on the night shift because then they used to stack the shelves at the night shift. So I did that, and then finally came across like the store manager, Jim something. He used to, yeah, I can't remember what his surname is. Maybe the other one was a Jim. Never mind, doesn't matter. Anyway, he was like, "What's your story?" So I gave him my story. So he gave me this thing called the overs, which is like a massive problem area. I won't go into it. Anyway, I fixed the overs because that's what I do. And everyone was like, "Wow, she fixed the overs." Like nobody's ever been able to sort that out before. So then he gave me beers, wines, and spirits, which is a section manager, not a department manager role. So I'm still working under. Then I fixed beers, wines, and spirits. And then he gave me the deli, and I fixed the deli. But beers, wines, and spirits and deli were day jobs. And then he wanted me to go back and fix the overs because at that point they'd gone back into the trash. And I was like, no. And then you get your experience of what happens when you say no, right? So then all of a sudden, you know, I'm not the golden girl anymore. I'm the one that won't do what she's told, right? So I'm a problem again. So in the end, I demoted myself to cashier, and I went and did a journalism course in the evening. Trained how to be a entertainment journalist. Started freelancing, and then got my break when I got the position at Live TV.
So basically there was people were placing barriers. First of all, you weren't stretched in school. Then when you were in a position where people again did put you in positions where they expected you to fail because no one had solved the overs, no one was doing the beers and whatever else, you solved them, but then they didn't allow you to progress in the rate that you should be allowed to progress.
No.
Okay.
I was already working at a level lower than where I should have been anyway. I should have had a department. Yeah, I think I did the display team before I demoted myself. I went and did secondment with the display team who like set up new stores and whatever, but that still wasn't like, it wasn't a promotion, it was just something else to do. And then so I fell into, well, I always loved film. So I used to write to people. I wrote to Barry Norman, who used to run Film 94. I wrote to the editor of Empire, and I was like, I'm going to be a film journalist. Like, how do I do this? And they were like, you need to do that. So I started doing those things. And then I became like a freelance film journalist for like The Voice and The Gleaner, which was cool. I used to do like the little music charts for The Gleaner as well. But obviously that couldn't pay the bills, so I was working in Our Price. That's right. I got a job in a record shop. That was pretty cool. And then I was doing all of that until I dropped my bus pass outside Nick Ferrari's house. And his wife found it and tracked me down to round the corner, and then she introduced me to Nick Ferrari, who was setting up Live TV at the time. And that's how I got into television. That's how I got into Live TV. I became a researcher at Live Television. He offered me like runner or researcher, and I was like, I don't make tea. So I had to go through the application day for the researchers, which I did, and I passed, and I became one of the researchers. And then I went from researcher to producer in about 9 months because the person that was supposed to be my producer got really ill. And then I kept training like the producers that came in to be my boss. And then in the end, Nick was like, just be a producer. I'm like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And then where did I go? So then I think I went to Channel 4 to work as a researcher because nobody took live TV seriously, so I couldn't step into a producer role,
Yeah.
allegedly. So I went to Channel 4 as a researcher. I went to the BBC as assistant producer, but had a terrible time there. But this time, it was Black people that were giving me the terrible time, Black men, unfortunately. So that was where I learned that like the knife can come from your own just as hard as
Yeah.
it can come from anywhere else. And then I worked at Nickelodeon. And then I kind of wanted to set something up to help young people, young Black people especially, get into film and TV. So I set up this project called Film Days. And out of my own money, and was very poor for a long time because people would go, oh, how are you funded? And I'd be like, oh, I just do it out of my own money with my wages. And people would go, oh. But they wouldn't go, oh, you could become a charity, you could apply for funding. No, nobody told me, and nobody told me anything. All these film people I was running around with. And so eventually I was like, I was on a dole doing Film Days, not having any money. I got some money from the Prince's Trust once. That was nice. And then I was like, oh, you know what? You're going to have to get a real job. So I went and worked in TV again for a little while. I'm trying to do the trajectory. TV. And then I got to a point where I needed a degree. Everyone had a degree and I didn't have a degree. And I got invited to join like the board of the Film Council, but to apply for it, the first line was like a degree and I didn't have one. And it became an issue at that point. So, and I thought about being a teacher and I couldn't be a teacher because I didn't have a degree. And so in the end, I bit the bullet and I went to Goldsmiths because it's supposed to be the best for media. And I did the foundation course and they said that if you got the first, that you could you get an automatic place on a degree course. So obviously I got the first and then I got the place on a degree course. And then I did that.
So in that time when you kind of like were applying for those positions and it was saying you need to have a degree, did you apply for those positions or was that kind of like you looked at it and said, I haven't got the degree, so I can't apply?
Yeah, I was just like, I'm not fitting the, when you get the tick box essential criteria, whatever, I'm missing essential criteria. They're not going to, I didn't think anyone would be making any special exceptions for me. So I just didn't bother. No, I didn't bother at all.
Because it's very interesting because one of the things which I've been looking at is the fact that things like that will put off women and most men will just say, okay, you think that's what you need, but actually you need me, right? And they'll just still put their names forward anyhow, you know.
That doesn't even work for me now. But yeah, no, they said that when I was at this place called Network of the World, which is like this sort of online TV thing. It was all cutting edge back in the early noughts. And one of my assistants, whose dad ran Goodwood, because that's what you do, the race course, he applied for a job that was 2 levels above. I was his line manager and he applied for a job that was 2 levels above me while he was my assistant. And I was just like, the hubris of this guy. Like, I wouldn't even dream about applying for that job. And he's there filling out his thing and getting ready to go to interview. And I was like, okay, it's like that.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. That's what I mean. But it's about it. It's about how people help you to navigate those spaces, the spaces that you've not been in, and you don't necessarily have individuals who who are in those spaces or who will mentor you or provide you with those opportunities. Have you had any mentors?
I have lots of mentors, but I pick most of them myself. So I have unofficial mentors, and I'm trying to think if I've ever had any official ones. I don't think so. You always get promised them, and then they never deliver. So somebody that I work with, I was at Central St. Martin's doing admin for a year once because I just had too many. It was when I'd given up on television and I wanted a job where I didn't think. And the person that was my line manager there became a mentor and was very instrumental in helping me get into academia and moving my career forward. And he's still a mentor. He proofreads all my stuff. And a friend now. I mean, I've known him for like, nearly 15 years probably. So, but he is more mentor than friend. I look to him for advice, and his name is in my book chapter in my published book, because I wouldn't be where I am without him. I did it myself, but you need help, right? And you need these resistance. And then I have writing mentors, so people like Francesca Sabande and Tressie Macmillan Cotton. They're like my unofficial like academic mentors. I like to read their work before I write my work. I'm trying to think. And then I take from people. I've always been an extractor. You take what's good, you reject what doesn't work for you, and then you move on. I've always been that kind of, information retrieval type person. So even people that I've had a line manager that, oh my God, like, we went to war, literally. But I learned a lot from him. He taught me some things like about how to introduce myself in email to academic people. And, just because I don't like him doesn't mean to say I can't learn from him, but yeah, other mentors, who else do I have I look up to? I can't think really. I think Peter's my biggest one. And then it's sort of just looking at what other. When I was in TV, there was a lovely woman. I cannot remember her name. I just remember she was a redhead, and I really looked up to her because she was amazing. So I've always had an issue where, for me to give someone respect, if they're above me, they have to be above me on a skill level as well as on a status level or a job title level, right? They have to be able to teach me something. And so it's very difficult to have respect for a line manager that doesn't know what they're doing and doesn't have anything to teach me, because it's like, well, I can't grow, I can't learn, right? So I'm constantly looking for people, but so a lot of people have mentored me and probably don't even know, because I'm watching them, I'm reading what they do, I'm following them on Twitter, I'm gleaning in, oh, that's how they think, and that's how they do that, and that's how they do that, and okay, fine.
Fantastic. That's really interesting. So how did we get to, from your journalism, you went back, did your degree, how did you get into kind of like the junglist historian, the music?
Oh, okay, yeah. So
where did that come from? I know you've done kind of like reports on music and film and stuff like that, but where did that go?
Okay, so I ended up being a teacher for 10 years once I got my degree. I tried to steer away from it, but I wanted a job. Well, allegedly then I started at the wrong time. I started in 2010, beginning of the Tory government. So I wanted a job, boots on the ground, that couldn't be taken away from me, and money would increase and whatever. So I like working with young people, and I used to train them a lot in television, how TV works. It's an apprenticeship field. So I went into education, had pretty much the same problems that I had in TV, so we won't go there. And there was a point when I was going for a job to be deputy head of English, and I was trying to and my cousin came to talk to me. He's a DJ, drum and bass DJ called Grime Minister, and he wanted me to help him work out his royalty statement, because he knew, everyone knew I'd worked in the media for years and whatever. And so I looked at the statement, and he was like, oh, you should come run this label with me, and and I was like, okay, yeah, that's not a bad idea, let's do that, And so I became at this crossroads where I was either going to do an MA in education and try and use that to bolster my career, because it taken me ages to get deputy head of English, like years and years more than most. And then or if I was going to go and do this music business management course. And then I didn't get the promotion for silly reasons. It really annoyed me. I disappeared from work. They had to beg me to come back after about 3 or 4 weeks. And then but it wasn't going to work because the people that got the job were incompetent, and they wanted me to be like the background to their foreground, and I'm not going to be anybody's donkey. That's not running. So in the end, I ended up picking the music masters. And for the dissertation, I wanted to do a dissertation on the concept of media independence, but Sally Ann Gross, who's just won a Music Week award for, like, you know, Woman of the Year or whatever, she said, no, I think you should do a dissertation on being a Black woman in drum and bass. And I was like, no, I didn't want to do the Black thing. And but when I started looking into it was fascinating, because I used to be a jungle raver. Like when I was at St. Martin's, I started raving when I was like 15. Like me, Frankie, Liana, and Pat, we used to go raving all the time, in a field, in a club, the Wag Bar, the Milk Bar, or whatever. I was outdoors. That's probably why I got the 2 A's, 2 B's, 2 C's down to the E's. But and so when I started doing the masters, started researching drum and bass with working with DJ Grime Minister, I just thought I'd be stepping back into my jungle club days. I don't remember why I stopped clubbing. I probably got bored. But there was just a sea of white guys everywhere. Some of them with their t-shirts off, which is like, ugh, you know. And like I was just spellbound by it. I was like, what is going on here? Like, what happened? And so there was no women. So in order to work out where the women had gone, I had to go through the history of jungle, you know, and then opened like this, you could call it a Pandora's box, of conflicting stories. And there's an issue with, whereas a lot of music journalism has become like historical documents, but it was just, you know, people writing about music at the time. They weren't like researching things properly.
Yeah.
Right. And knowing that I had to carve out this brick for myself, my best friend Sandra, she always just talks about the brick, right? And George as well, who's somebody that was working on the course at on the masters at Westminster. They talk about having a brick. So I thought, well, you know, drum and bass jungle can be my brick, right? You know, because nobody's writing about it. I mean, there's a few people. There was 2 books. If you think of like compared to like house music or whatever, where there's like you know, loads of books. So it became my thing. And one of the women that I interviewed, because I interviewed 10 women for my research, 2 lovely Black women who shall remain anonymous, as they are supposed to. But I used to say, oh, well, you know, I write about jungle history. And this person said, no, Julia, you're a junglist historian. And so that's how the name came. It wasn't mine. It belongs to somebody else who doesn't want to be named. But I thought, oh, okay, because I'm a junglist and a historian. So I'm a junglist historian. So I still rave. I've got right back into the jungle scene, which is good when energy permits. I work a lot with an organization called EQ50, who work to advocate for women in jungle drum and bass. And I work to unerase people like DJ Flight, like MC Chickaboo, you know, that have kind of been, well, they have been erased. You know, women are erased, but Black women are erased to infinity, right? So, you know, we work on, you know, profiling, bringing up the next generation. I had a show called Conscious Lyrics, which is kind of on hold. There's about 20 episodes. And I basically just interviewed people in jungle drum and bass that needed to be interviewed that hadn't been. Because everyone talks about the big names, you know, Goldie, Fabio, Groove Rider, and, you know, rap, right? But there are many other names. And the more I dug into jungle, the more fascinating it is, because there's loads of elements of jungle that haven't been written about. Like jungle was this complete ecosystem for largely working class Black, but also working class white youth as well. And they were like interdependent on each other, like the vinyl cutters, the DJs, the agents, the printers, the graphic designers, the producers, the engineers. They were all operating incredibly well outside of the major label system. But obviously they were making so much money that they got the attention of the majors, who obviously wanted a slice. They can't have that, you know, they wanted a piece. And that's kind of where things started to break down. I mean, people say there wasn't a whitewashing of jungle into drum and bass, but I've proved that there was very much so. There was a whole discourse around the idea of, you know, drum and bass, sophisticated, refined, good, jungle, savage, you know, rough, ragga, gunshot, bad, right? And I have to work quite hard all the time to, well, when I'm being represented, when my words are being represented, to make sure that you know, I've got a video coming out which is really cool, and I have to keep reinforcing, because my opinion is different to other person's opinion, that I will not have any kind of sophisticated, more scientific, all the tropes, because they all mean the same thing, right? When the white people came, it got really good, you know, and it was just better. So when it wasn't, drum bass is not better than jungle, full stop, period. But so yeah, so that's how I got into it. And I think, and then because my dissertation, I went to Vienna to present it in this music business research conference, which I'm on their board now, which is very cool. And then Monique Charles, who is now at Chapman, I think, in LA, if Chapman's in LA. But brilliant, absolutely. She's definitely a mentor. Like her PhD, oh my God, that was so good. Like I read it cover to cover and I was like, yeah, I wish mine would be this good, my MA dissertation. But yeah. And then she invited me to contribute to a volume she put together called Black Music in Britain in the 21st Century. I'm just looking at the hard copy now. And then also Martin James, who also wrote one of the core books on jungle drum and bass. He was at Southampton working with Chris Anderton, and they invited me to put a chapter in their book, I think like media narratives in music or something. It was about alternate narratives. So I did, you know, sort of drum and bass, but from a women's perspective. And then with the black one, I did jungle, but from a black woman's perspective. So the one was, you know, it's more mixed. It was mixed ethnicity, whereas the black one I focused in. And so then I had like, yeah, so that was cool. Those people came to me, and then I'm very avid on Twitter. So then people started asking me to write things. So I wrote something for the Quieters, and that led to Repeater reaching out and asking me to do the radio show and doing the memoir, which I'm doing for them. And then I've done did a thing for Beat Portal, did that quite after my dissertation. They reached out. So everyone comes to me. I don't want to, you know, I used to be a freelancer. It's long, you know what I mean? I don't want to be out there begging for work, giving people my ideas, because that's basically what freelancing means. So people come to me because I've built this sort of rep of being the junglist historian, so to speak.
No, it's fascinating. It really is fascinating, because you've carved out a place for yourself. Are you gonna do a PhD?
PhD is violence, right? So I think my best mate's doing a PhD. This is her second time round, because the first time round we did it at Goldsmiths and the violence was just on some next level, infinity level, right? So we came out of that. But we're in a good place now. And most of my peers, because people doctor me all the time. This guy wrote to me and was like, Dr. Toppin was like, no. You know, it's nice. And I did want to go full tilt academia at Goldsmiths, and I don't get distracted about my Goldsmith days, because when my essays were too good at Goldsmiths, they used to write that this is good, but perhaps it's too good, like too good for me, right? So that kind of put me off a bit, and I didn't have the money either. I didn't know you could get money to do a PhD back then, and no one encouraged it either. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, at Goldsmiths, they didn't encourage me to do a master's or anything. So I'm going to do a PhD by publication. I've got a master plan for the next. I mean, people are constantly asking me to write. Like, I can't keep up with the amount of things. In fact, it's one of the reasons why I feel quite pressured at the moment, because I've literally got a backlog of writing, which includes 2 books that people want to do. So yeah, it's going to be a PhD by publication, and I've already kind of thought, okay, I've got these 2 ones in jungle drum and bass with women, and I'm going to do one on my television days, which is like women in the creative industries, which is similar. Then I've got my memoir, which is basically women in the creative industries as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's the other one? Somebody wanted me to do a book on jungle, but not sure where. But I'm doing a paper on the ecosystem thing that I was going to talk about. That's 5. And then I was speaking to this guy at this conference, and see, he said I only needed 4, whereas somebody told me I needed 6. And I'm like, I'm always in that treat me like a white man over here. So if he only needs 4, I'm gonna try and push mine through with like 4 as well, 4 or 5.
Well, it sounds like you're almost 3/4 of the way there. You just have to do the narrative which links everything together.
Yeah, that would be easy. Yeah, that would be easy.
And you already know that narrative. So I can't see why within the next 18 months you shouldn't be sat here or sat with Dr. Toppin, the title there fully and fleshed out.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, Westminster don't pay for you to do PhD. But I am having a meeting with lots of research people on Monday to find out how they can support me in my work. So
yeah.
So I think, I mean, I bought a book on it. I've got, as ever, I've got a book that I haven't read on doing your PhD by publication, and someone else reached out to me about supervision, funnily enough, and I was like, I can't supervise you, I've not done a PhD. But what we said was we kind of try and support each other. And I'm really good at running alongside someone else, so I won't do it. And then if someone else says they're doing it, I'm like, okay, well, let's just keep in touch every once in a while, and I'll be like, oh, I've got to get my bit done before we meet up and do that. I'm good at doing that.
So you need somebody there to be your motivator, and not motivator, but someone, as you said right at the start of the conversation. It was Amanda, I think it was Amanda Sellers or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I need an Amanda Sellers everywhere. Yes.
Yeah, you need that Amanda Sellers.
I hope she's doing very well, by the way, wherever she is.
But, that competitiveness, but not in, as you said, not in a punitive way. It's a competition that pushes you, keeps you real, keeps you on target, and gets you over the line.
Yeah, because like my mate Jamie that I work with, my colleague, he's doing both doing the fellowship, and I've been looking into it earlier, and I said to him, oh, we should meet, and he said, oh, I've already started my statement. I was like, he's already started his statement, I've got to do mine, I've got to say. So now I'm like, because we have to do it because this is the final year in the old rule book or whatever, and I need to do it to push myself into senior lecture pay band, because I'm at the end of my pay band now. So it's a hurdle. They should really give me senior lecture anyway, because I had it at Hearts, but that's another story about inequity of pay, but we won't go there too deep. But yes, so in a year or so, I should have it.
I've got your numbers, so I'm gonna every now and then I'm gonna say, you know what, I'll be your accountability partner.
Yes, you can be my accountability partner. Yes, that'd be good.
Right. So just because I know the struggles it is for people to get onto PhDs, but for Black people to get onto PhDs, it can be a real struggle.
Yeah, because they're offering those ones up at Glasgow, aren't they? And God, I saw one somewhere the other day, and I was like, nah, I couldn't tell anyone to go there. I think it's something to do with the Sun newspaper, and I was like, don't be silly. Like, I wouldn't tell anyone to go and do anything there. It's madness. But yeah, there's a lot of offers at the moment. But yeah, I've got a job. I like my job. And I can, I think I can get it done without going to. I would like to learn more about research methods, but my uni have said they're going to support me in that.
Okay.
Because I supervise a lot of MA dissertations. But yeah, I think I can. Yeah, it'll happen. It'll just be another year or so.
There's an organization, I'm going to plug them now, Leading Roots.
I love Leading Roots. Chantel, who's one of my mentors. Yeah, she's co something with Paulette.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're very good. Yes.
Absolutely. And they work with William Acker, and he does a PhD. It's almost like a PhD camp Every
Oh,
Thursday,
really? Okay.
every first Thursday of the month, he takes on students and they go through what they're planning to do for their dissertations. And it's at various stages that they have the conversation. Those who are still writing the proposals, those who
Yeah.
are in the first, second year, but it's a really nurturing environment so that you're
Okay.
never alone throughout your
Yes.
PhD journey, you
Yeah.
know. So I'll link you up with that afterwards, but it's something which I think is really important.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Like just knowing how to do things. Like I was saying, I got asked to look at grant proposals the other day.
mhm,
No, not look at grant. I got asked to be on the advisory board of something, right? And I didn't even know what that meant.
mm, mm,
And I did. I sent the email to my betters, and I
mhm,
just said, look, like, you got me out here hanging. Like, people shouldn't be asking me to do things, and I have
mm,
so little training. I don't even know what this
mm,
thing is,
mm, mm,
So, but then again, because I have my mentors and my other academic mentor, George Musgrave, another, someone that I just pluck. I emailed him and I said, "What does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean?" And he got back to me, straight away. Oh, this means that they want you to look at this and da 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 da
mhm,
da. So, yeah, it's important to have like a support system and try and
mhm.
set that up. Yeah.
Definitely. Um, we're out of time almost. I don't know if anyone has a question. Normally I open it up, but we've just been talking and talking and talking.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's I always have two final questions.
Okay.
But is there anyone else who might want to ask a question? Otherwise, I'll jump across to my two final ones. I haven't seen any hands go up, so I'm going to jump in with my two final questions. Throughout this, the whole idea of this is about belonging, that sense of identity, sense of belonging,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, my question that I was going to ask is about that sense of belonging, or I've actually got about three questions, right? Um, it's the question throughout your journey so far. Where have been the places where you would say that you've had that sense of belonging? Have you
Okay.
ever found that sense of belonging? And then the other two questions, or the back-to-back question, is what advice would you give to your younger self? And the final question is, what do you think your younger self would look at you now and say, wow?
Okay. Younger self. I'm gonna do the last two first because I can do them quickly.
Yeah, okay.
Right. So the advice that I would give to my younger self is to go and read about misogynoir. I said, because if I'd known what misogynoir was and been able to contextualize it and frame it and read, the Bailey and the Sarah Ahmed and all that, and just known what was going on, being able to put a framework on what was happening to me in the workplace over and over and over again, instead of people telling me I had anger management issues, or I got a chip on my shoulder, I don't know how to communicate, I generate more heat than light was another classic. So all of that, I would have been even more confident in my just absolute rejection of everybody's assessment of my personality and what was wrong with me in the workplace. So that's what I would tell my younger self. I think my younger self would be very proud that I'm a lecturer and a published author and a multi-hyphenate. I've been a television producer, radio producer, a website producer. I've put furniture together. I've done whatever I wanted to do, and they'd also be happy that I walked away. I used to talk about quitting my jobs on my birthday, and I tell you what, nearly quit Westminster this year. I was like, I'm not happy in the workplace. Maybe it's time to go. But then I've matured, so I've thought it through. But I've walked away from a lot of jobs on my birthday because life's too short, definitely. So yes, I think my younger self would be proud, and my grandmother definitely, my posh grandmother. I think she would have been really, really proud that I was a lecturer. She'd be running around telling everyone. But where have I had a sense of belonging? Okay, so in terms of in work we're talking about, really, right? So, oh God, let's go from the beginning. Sainsbury's, no. When I was doing the journalism and I was with my little crew of wannabe film journalists trying to blag into film screenings, that was cool. And we all went to Cannes in 1994. That was really cool. It was nice to belong to my little tribe then. Live TV was cool for a time. I belonged to that. I was at Nickelodeon for a stretch, and that was really nice as well. They were nice peoples. BBC, absolutely not. And then I guess after that, when I worked at Central St. Martin's, even though it was an admin job, I really loved that year there. I was valued and I was respected, and I learned lots, and I was in a really creative environment with amazing people, and I loved that. And yeah, that was just an amazing. I was so bored. I had to leave because I was bored. I had all my work done by 11. So after my set up all my systems, and then I really feel a sense of belonging at Westminster because I did my masters there, and the team on the masters, it's changed a lot. But like Sally Ann Gross, George Musgrave, Graham Ball, Jamie Reddington, going back there to be a lecturer, a full-time one, because I'm full-time now, that really felt like coming home. And I actually said that in my interview, like, I want to come home, so I do feel like I belong at Westminster, and that's good.
Yeah.
And then also, I call it the sisterhood, like my Black female academic tribe, Rita Gale, Shireen Donnelly Scott, Francesca Sabande, Sandra Yakura, Chantel Lewis, who brought me to Oxford. I can say I've spoken at Oxford now because she brought me there to talk. Yeah, that's the core of us. And then there's the music people like Isata and Estee, and so I'm part of lots of tribes now. And EQ50, and my drum and bass jump up jungle drum and bass community. I'm part of quite a few communities now, so I'm quite happy. I do feel a really good sense of belonging to these different spaces.
Brilliant. I've loved your story.
Thank you.
I've loved you. You're to me, you're a female feminist, right?
Probably, yeah.
You don't take you're a Black feminist. You don't take any nonsense, and I don't blame you.
No,
right? You have to work too hard to exist in these spaces, and you're being your authentic self, and you're being true to yourself. And what we need is that when we're being true to ourselves, that we do have those role models, we do have those sisterhoods, those brotherhoods that can unite and uplift. So more power to you, right? And hopefully I can help in whatever way I can to celebrate your achievements and to help direct you in whatever way that we can help each other, because I think you're doing a fantastic job.
Thank you.
All right. So yeah, I've really enjoyed our conversation. It's been absolutely brilliant. Okay. I'm going to just share with everyone what we're doing next week, and then if people want to stay behind for the little afterglow, then we will have that as well. Let me just share this section. Okay, so for next week, we're going to have Professor Dilshan Sheikh, and she's the Dean of the Faculty of Business at Arden University in Birmingham. And so she's going to be our guest, specialist in EDI, I believe, or DE&I. If you have missed any of the other episodes, then please go to our YouTube channel, which is tinyurl.com/belonging-IAO. And there are a number of other excellent guests which we've had on. And as I say, I'm going to just round it up. All of the individuals who are so willing to share their stories, including Julia, it gives us an insight in what it means to belong, and belonging means different things to different people, and that's based on the experiences that they have had. And I think if we take some time to walk a mile walk for 10 minutes in somebody else's shoes, I think this world would be so much more of a better place. We won't be so introspective. But until then, let's keep trying to see how we can celebrate our sense of identity and sense of belonging. I want to just thank everyone for coming this week. And I will see you again next week at 12:30.